there's a lot of common sense that you hear in the rooms of AA, and there is some stuff that some people will find a little bit off-putting, and they may have heard about it, which is kind of the use of the God word in AA. It's regarded as a spiritual program. Now, I didn't know any of this stuff when I walked in the rooms. I did hear the God word mentioned a couple of times in the first meeting, and I just went, oh, this is what it is, because I was spiritually, religiously, nothing in me. Well, when I heard the God word mentioned, I thought it was some sort of religious thing, and I thought that I had to find God to get sober. Now, some people will say that's true in AA, and some people will say that's not true. I know people that have been in Alcoholics Anonymous for 20, 30 years that are not religious. I also know people that are quite religious that have had a few years in AA. So it really is kind of, I think, what's the words they say? It's a big enough program for everyone. It's a big enough fellowship for everyone.
The path is wide enough for anyone who wants to enter.
Yeah. So realistically, that one of the things that Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, wanted to make very clear was the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it. Obviously, there are principles that need to sort of happen to make a fellowship work. You can't just run riot throughout a fellowship. It just doesn't work that way. But ideally, people can come in and do whatever they want in the respect that they can believe what they want. You can have Muslims, you can have Sikhs, you can have Christians, you can have whatever. No one cares what religious belief you've got, whether you've got one or not. As I say, when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, my religious beliefs were zero, because that belief for me was that door was shut when I realised that my dad had died, and I thought, well, if there's a God, why is all these scumbags walking around on the streets alive and my dad's dead? A very immature way of looking at it, but I was a child. So I shut that door. That's kind of religious door, if you like. Not that I kind of really gave it much thought anyway. But as time went on, I became more and more, there isn't one, it's nonsense, it's this, it's that. And even after a few years in AA, I still don't know what in AA they call it higher power. You've got to believe in a higher power to get you through some of this stuff, if you like. And that higher power for me was not God. And I know a lot of people where they just choose something like nature, for example, that will be their higher power, and they can use any power greater than themselves, as long as it's not themselves, to believe in. And then what happens is you start to see things in a slightly different way. And I've become a lot more open and willing to learn about anything, really, since I've been in AA. And one of the things is, I think it'll be very remiss of me to go, I absolutely fundamentally say there is no God. So I don't know. I can't prove that. But on the other end of the scale, I can't prove there is one. So I choose to now say I'm agnostic. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know. And that's fine. But that's a massive shift from where I was. So the spiritual aspect of it for me, I would say to any newcomer that's looking at getting into recovery that thinks Alcoholics Anonymous might be a way forward for them, it's just don't worry about it too much. Just put it to one side, come back to it later. What you need to do really is just get to meet and show up, listen and share. And you will find that by talking, it takes a lot of power out of whatever problem you might have, especially talking to people that know how your head's working, because everyone sitting in the rooms is a recovering alcoholic and they all know where you've been. And 9 times out of 10, it's like a room full of nodding dogs. Everyone's going, yeah, and they'll start laughing. Yeah, what are you laughing at? And they're laughing because they've been there. They know what it's like. They know that you can get well from this.